So good evening everyone. Welcome to our evening Dhamma. Tonight we're looking at right livelihood. Path factor number 5. And this completes the morality or the ethics section. So we have right speech, right action, and now the right livelihood. And it's if you look at right livelihood, it's interesting. It basically means right speech and right action. If you look at the definition, which is sometimes misleading. And if you look at it, in this case I think it is, because if you look at it, you think, why did the Buddha have to add right livelihood? When right livelihood really, the definition is refraining from livelihood that involves wrong action and wrong speech. So all the kinds of wrong action, or at least I guess the lying, or all kinds of wrong action, or lying, wrong speech. If you do that to make a living, that's wrong livelihood. But then you think, well, but then if you're keeping right speech and right livelihood, why do we need to mention a right speech and right action? Why do you need to mention right livelihood? But I think it is quite important. I think this belies the fact that right livelihood is an important part of who we are. At its very essence, livelihood means staying alive. What do you do to stay alive? And it was a big part of the Buddha's conception of the monastic life. And I don't think this would have been something even unfamiliar to him. It was something he had to deal with for 6 years. Once he left the palace, it was a question, how do you stay alive? Because suddenly he didn't have a livelihood. And so a big part of spiritual practice at the time was to go without food, or to go with a very bare minimum of food, under the realization that livelihood is a big deal. If you want to stay alive, if you want food, you've got to do quite a bit of work to get it, even just food. And then there's clothing, shelter, medicine. So from the very beginning, this was something that would have weighed on the Bodhisattva's mind, and of course was something the Buddha had to consider when organizing his community, even just living himself. So it actually weighs in quite significantly how we live our lives, beyond simply wrong action and wrong speech. I mean, on the one, at the very outset, there's the question of what is right livelihood, right? If you don't define it the way the Buddha did, there's a question about livelihood, and people feel righteous or even guilty about their livelihood, potentially for the wrong reasons. Maybe a person has a dull job that is meaningless, pointless, and they think this is, they don't label it this way, but they think it's wrong livelihood. They think it's wrong, because when you should enjoy your job, right? You should do something you love. And other people do something they love, and they think that's right livelihood because it makes them happy. And so even just defining livelihood, right livelihood, as having nothing to do with whether you like it or dislike it, but having more to do with, is it wholesome or unwholesome? Is it involved with wholesomeness or unwholesomeness? Is a significant step, and it clarifies some of the guilt we might feel at being insignificant. I'm just a menial laborer, or maybe I work at McDonald's or something. Maybe I have a job that is very insignificant, or maybe someone is famous, People think the greatest livelihood wouldn't, to be a famous doctor or scientist, or someone who changes the world. That would be the best sort of livelihood. For a monk, it would be to be the Dalai Lama. That would be you're such a public figure who ostensibly does such great good in the world. But that's not the measure of right livelihood. None of that is, really. A monk living off in the forest who nobody knows can have perfect livelihood. They can also have terrible livelihood. They can be killing wild animals for food, which would be very bad. But so basically, again, the part of this path that orients us, the part of this factor that orients us, is around the right action and right speech. So your livelihood is okay. It's within the boundaries of what will lead you to the noble path. Again, talking about the preliminary path, the cultivation. If you keep basically the 5 precepts, if you don't kill, if your livelihood is not to kill, obviously, and steal or cheat or lie, that's a good basis for right livelihood. But of course it's not yet right livelihood, and any livelihood that involves torturing others, manipulating others, even any livelihood that involves greed or ambition, from a meditative point of view, is wrong livelihood. Even at a meditation center, if you start requesting special food, or if you go out and, as a meditator, if you go out to the store and buy food, if you worry about food, is it delicious, does it taste good, that kind of thing, this you could call wrong livelihood, or in line with wrong livelihood, of course on a much lower level. But what it means is we have this necessity to go and eat, but we're making it complicated. It's becoming a hindrance. Your need to stay alive is getting in the way. And so the question for the Buddha was always, how do you keep this from getting in the way? The need to wear clothing really gets in the way, because of course you have to go out, and first you have to make all the money, and then you have to go and buy the clothes, choose the clothes. Or maybe, if at the very least you have to make clothes, which is a lot of work itself. And then even worse, you start to get attached to the clothes. Maybe you wear beautiful clothes, and you get this image, this is what the kind of clothes that I wear, and this makes me look like this sort of person. Easy to get complicated. What you have to do to stay alive, or to get the things that you want. So the greatest right livelihood, of course, is the monastic life, from a Buddhist point of view. This is why the Buddha created it. He envisioned monastic life as the best way to stay alive, without engaging in all the complicated livelihood-related issues. So he said, for food, you take whatever people give you, alms. As a spiritual person, it's not easy to find support, to find a community and people who are willing to keep you alive. For robes, for clothing, you just take rags, scraps of cloth that are discarded, and put them together. The kind of equivalent nowadays would be to, at the least, for a lay person to go to the second-hand clothing store. For a monk, it would be to go to the rejects, second-hand clothing store, the stuff they throw away, they give away for free. reading something. I'll have to talk about that later. So I mean, it's not a matter of having to become a monk to gain right livelihood, but it's important to understand this, to see this as a linear progression, right? Of the worst kind of livelihood is where you're doing the most awful things to stay alive, or to make money, to live a lifestyle that is grotesque, and slowly simplifying our life. Again, thinking about wholesomeness, what keeps us and what allows us to continue our life, all the way to living in a meditation center or a monastery, where you're in your room and you say, well, if I don't go for food, I'm going to starve, and I'm not going to be able to meditate. And considering what is the best way to get that food, the simplest way. You have to consider, because if you don't eat the right food or enough food, it'll be hard to meditate as well. So it doesn't mean that you don't ask for food. If there's something missing in our diet here, you have to let us know. Or if you need special food and you're allergic to this type of food, don't just eat it and suffer. But again, these are all issues. It points out that livelihood is, for all of us, an important part of our path. So it's not just about right action and right speech. It's about understanding our livelihood and making it, staying alive, and not allowing the necessities of life to get in our way, making them the least complicated and the least of a hindrance as possible. I think that's it. That's all I have to say about that. You all can go. You don't have to sit here for the rest of the questions there. In fact, I'd probably encourage you not to, because they're often not about meditation, and they're mostly things that you've heard before. So Alexander, you're here. How many days?
2 or 3 weeks.
3 weeks. And remind me, have you read my booklet?
Yes.
We haven't done the online course, have we?
No.
Okay. So you've been doing meditation according to the booklet? Some? Okay, so maybe we'll have a refresher tomorrow morning. So you call him after you finish. She will call you after she finishes, and you'll meet me here tomorrow around 8:15. Okay. Everything okay?
Yeah.
Room is okay? You might want to, I think we'd rather you go in those rooms over there, because that room doesn't have a fire exit. The window is blocked.
Yeah, by the porch.
Yeah. So Robin was having some concerns about that, so we'll leave it open till last, and the last person who comes has to stay in it.
Okay, so I should move to one of the back rooms?
Probably better.
Okay.
It's not like it's dangerous. In fact, the owner told me that he pointed out specifically that the window across the hall is the fire exit. So just don't light fires. No, there's many ways fires can start, right? Find out where the fire extinguishers are. Everyone should know where the fire extinguisher downstairs is. Do you know where the fire extinguisher is downstairs? Yeah, so everyone should know where it is. I should tell people when they come in, just in case. It happens. We have karma. Sometimes karma catches up with you. Very strange in meditation centers. Strange things happen. Because we're working out our karma, so sometimes it can come at you quite quickly. Not to scare you or anything. Okay, have a good night. The First Noble Truth is still true with regards to sankhara, even for someone who has eliminated craving. Well, I'm not going to go into stack exchange, not right now, but so again, the First Noble Truth doesn't mean they are suffering. It means they are dukkha, and dukkha means that which is not able to cause happiness, that which is bad. And they are useless, meaningless, just no good. And for an enlightened being, that's true as well. They are still no good. They are still not sukha. They are not something that causes happiness. It's not that they are suffering in that sense. So it's important to understand the First Noble Truth. Or it's important to understand suffering, the concept of suffering, or dukkha, that it doesn't in every way mean painful, stressful. But in a sense, they are inferior. In a sense, they are stressful, even though they don't cause stress, because they are incessant. The arising and ceasing, they are relentless. So they are no good. We think of this arising and ceasing as good, This is a wonderful world to live in, but it's not. And an enlightened being realizes that. But the nature of them is this incessant arising, and that's why they're called dukkha. Maybe later, if you give me that link later, I can go to Stack Exchange and look at it. Is it important to be mindful of involuntary actions such as coughing or twitching? Well, that's not action. Right action has all to do with your intentions. I mean, that's what I said yesterday. So, in reference to yesterday's talk, no, that has nothing to do with it. Like, suppose you're sitting with a knife in your hand and you twitch and you kill someone. Well, you shouldn't have had the knife in your hand, probably, but you're not guilty of murder. So right action has nothing to do with the action. I mean, I thought I made that fairly clear last night. But maybe not. Is there a difference between being wise and having wisdom? Well, there's no such thing as a being. The being, anything, is not real. But there's no such thing as possessing either. So it's not being or having, it's about wisdom arising. But conceptually we say both. We say one has wisdom, panyawa, or one is wise. I don't know how you'd say that. Nipako is a way of saying it. How can I see this text and sutta of the Pali that you are using during broadcasts? I would like to look these up for further study, but I can't always make out the exact words you're using. Well, I don't post them. I mean, I'm taking a lot of this from memory, and I'm reading from various sources. No, there's not one source that I read from. I mean, maybe eventually, once we get back to a good platform, I can have screencasting. There's this app, studio thing that allows you to do that, to show your screen, so I may be able to do that, but it probably wouldn't be great anyway, because YouTube quality is not great. You can, if you want to email me with some, hey, you said this, where can I find that? Those kind of emails I'm happy to answer, although I'm very bad at answering email. Hopefully I'll get back to you on it. Too many emails. If in my room is a spider insect, I should try to get them through the window to freedom, or just leave them alone and ignore them when a mosquito settles on my screen, for example. Yeah, well, I mean, you're not responsible for the acts of others. This is all about your intentions, but I would say it's compassionate to think of their well-being, and so letting them out. But that's totally optional. I mean, I think if a bird is fluttering around in your house, you probably do the compassionate thing to let it out, because that's a significant thing you can do. But insects, it's really, they're just going to come back in anyway. More of them are going to come in. So I generally let them out. I generally, like, if there's flies in here, I'll try and find a way to let it outside. I think it's a compassionate thing to do. It's a good thing to do. It's not something you should obsess over, and certainly not something you should worry about. It's sort of an optional, do what you can, but getting a fly out of the house is not an easy task. I remember once when I was doing tree planting. This was after I'd started meditating, and I went up north to do tree planting. And if you know anything about North Canada in the summer, which most people don't, but I'll tell you, the mosquitoes up there, they said they were I don't know if it was a joke or not, but I believe it. that the mosquitoes were chasing away the bears. And like it really is clouds of mosquitoes when you get up in the north. And it's quite remarkable. So I was thinking, I was reading about this, I was thinking, how am I going to do this without killing them, right? I mean, I wouldn't kill them, but how am I going to do this without getting eaten alive, I guess? And I read about the various, the only repellent that really works is DEET, which is really bad for you. So I thought, well, if I'm going to use DEET every day and enough to keep these, apparently it leads to sleep loss and hallucinations and all sorts of bad things. So instead I had this full body mosquito net. Anyway, that's not the point. One night I got out of my tent to go to use the tree, and I'd forgot to close the door. When I got back, the tent was full of mosquitoes. There were like at least 20 mosquitoes, probably more, in my tent. And so I spent the next hour with this little cup getting the mosquitoes out one by one by one and using a flashlight to find them and getting them out without killing them. I mean, that was probably more for my sake than theirs. I think it's optional. It's something that's good to do. But it's certainly not killing them if you don't do it. My email address is yuttadhammo@gmail.com, but don't broadcast that on the internet, because then lots of people are going to email me. Okay, that's all the questions tonight. Please don't email me with questions like tonight. I tend to respond better to technical questions because they're easy to answer, but I'm using my phone a lot for email. So I'm not going to answer questions like tonight's questions. Many people email me with questions about their practice and so on, and I'm sorry, but I just don't answer them. It's too many, and I don't really, I have to be on the computer, and it's just not the way I want to live my life, I'm sorry to say. So thank you all for coming tonight.